Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this virtual world of Women and Children First. My name is Sarah Hollenbeck. I'm the co-owner of Women and Children First, one of the last feminist bookstores left in the United States. Today, we are so excited to celebrate the release of Dear Sophie, Love Sophie by Sophie Lucido Johnson. Sophie is joined tonight in conversation with José Olivarez, and we could not be more thrilled. We begin our virtual events as we begin our events held in the bookstore with a land acknowledgement. So please join me in acknowledging that the land on which our bookstore stands is the unceded territory of the Peoria, Potawatomi, and Miami people. There are over 75,000 Indigenous people living in Illinois, and we strive to recognize and honor Native literature and community. And we encourage you to learn more about land acknowledgements and why we do them, and the rightful owners of the land where you're watching tonight's event. A good place to start is land acknowledgement on native-land.ca. And also check out the American Indian Center of Chicago to go beyond the words to the work itself and uplift what they are doing now. So Women and Children First is now open for in-store browsing. We do continue to require masks when you're shopping in our store. And we also offer curbside pickup, and we ship anywhere in the United States. And we also are going to have some in-person events next month, hopefully, if all goes well. But many of our events will still stay virtual so that we serve all of our communities, including the disabled community. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you have a question for Sophie or Jose, you can do that. Ask that question by putting it in the Ask a Question box at the bottom of your screen. Also, there's a very handy Buy the Book button at the bottom of the screen. That will take you to Women and Children First website, where you can buy Dear Sophie, Love Sophie, or any number of books, including Jose's incredible poetry collections. Now, on to the main event. Sophie Lucido Johnson is a writer, illustrator, comedian, and the editor-in-chief of Neutrons Protons, which is an online literary magazine. She has been published in The New Yorker, Guernica, The Guardian, Vice, Catapult, Dane, McSweeney's, Jezebel, The Hairpin, The Nation, and Rookie. And the first book she published, Many Love, we had an amazing book launch party in person back in the bookstore in 2018, and that's also an incredible, incredible graphic memoir. José Olivarez is the son of Mexican immigrants. His debut book of poems, Citizen Illegal, was a finalist for the Penn Gene Stein Award and a winner of the 2018 Chicago Review of Books. It was also named a top book of the 2018 by the Detroit Journal, NPR, and the New York Public Library. He is the co-editor of the Breakbeats Poets Volume 4, Latinx. He is the co-host of the poetry podcast, The Poetry of Gods. In 2018, he was awarded the first annual Author and Artist in Justice Award from the Phillips Books House Association and named a debut poet of the 2018 by Poets and Writers. I just want to say before we go live that how much I adore this incredible graphic memoir. It is vulnerable and surprising and such a gift. And I can't wait to talk about it with so many folks who come into the bookstore, because so many people need it. It is perfect in the way that it feels like reaching back to hug your past self and having that self reach back and hug you, but in book form. And that's a pretty cool accomplishment. So please join me in welcoming Sophie Lucido Johnson and José Olivarez.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that introduction. Sophie, I'm so excited to be here in conversation with you. Before we get started, I just want to remind people about the bluish tealish button down at the bottom of the screen. Make sure you buy Sophie's book, Dear Sophie, Love Sophie. I can't wait to talk to you more about the book. I really loved it. And right next to that button, there's also an ask a question button. So if you have questions for either or both of us, um, please put them there. We will definitely make time for your questions. Um, I feel so good and so excited for this chance to talk to you, Sophie. I guess I want to begin just by maybe checking in and seeing how you're feeling. I believe, did your book come out um, yesterday, or has it been now a week?
It's been out a week.
Okay. So congratulations. How are you feeling in this moment after its release?
It's really lovely to be here at Women and Children First. And it's really lovely to be here with you, Jose. That makes me feel like all kinds of fluttery because I'm such a fan. I want there to be a buy your book button too. But I feel like people will find it. I hope that you'll all find it. Your poetry is extraordinary. I'm feeling okay. I think something that has been coming up for me is, I'm just going to tell you the truth, is that some of the feedback that I've gotten has been that the book is nice or sweet or cute, which all feels sort of like coded language for like it's about women and like because there's eating disorders in it and self-harm and stuff that I don't think is sweet or nice or cute. So I've been feeling a little bit of like, oh, I'm feeling like this is people are thinking to not take this seriously, but it felt serious to write it. But I'm kind of a silly person, so that is, I guess I'm feeling very like naked and also postpartum body. The metaphor is mixing. I am truly postpartum, but it feels naked to have the book out, and also really good to be done and to have had such a great team on it and for it to exist. I think it's really beautiful. I'm very happy when I hold it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested in some of these feelings that you're bringing up for a number of reasons. Um, the art is absolutely stunning. There's so many moments that just captured me. I'm thinking about right off the top of my head the moment where you talk about writing to your monster and the way that you kind of, illustrate the monster and show it as this kind of presence. Um, it's just like really evocative, and it made me think about my own monsters and uh, how maybe when I was younger it felt very important to fight my monsters, but as I get older it feels like those fights are not fights we can win. You know what I mean? Like maybe there's a different relationship we can have with these feelings and these kinds of spirits that kind of ask us to consider ourselves. Um, and I feel, I also feel about. I mean, I totally understand your perception around people using this language of, oh, it's cute and what that means. But to me, like silliness and comedy is serious. Like one of the ways that we process the world is through laughter. And so I guess I'm saying that to say, my hope is that as more people come to the book and really see everything that you put into it, that you'll be able to have some of the conversations that you were looking to start when you took up the project in the first place.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that, and certainly their beginning. And I think maybe most important to me would be that other people feel empowered to get in touch with their younger selves and figure out what they need to mend. I feel like there's some stuff. There's always this nurturing that kind of often needs to take place. Our adult selves taking care of like the child who didn't get everything they needed always. And I feel like I've never met an adult for whom that is not true. There might be one, but I've never met them. So
Right.
I think that feels like the most important. Here comes my cat. Here he is. He's come to the reading.
Hi.
Hello.
This was a celebrity guest appearance.
Celebrity guest appearance. There you go. Goodbye.
Sophie, so I wrote out some questions because I'm a nerd and I deeply loved your book. But maybe we should begin with having you read from the book so people get a sense of what the project looks like and some of the topics you cover.
Well, I would love to read from the book. So I'm going to try to share my screen. I have successfully done this once before and unsuccessfully done it more times than that. Oh, can you see it?
Yes.
You can?
I can. I see it. It's on screen.
Isn't this cool? This like background? I feel like it's really cool. I don't know how I made it appear, but I did, and it's made me feel very powerful. Okay, I'm gonna read a little bit from the chapter that is like kind of about boys, because crushing on boys, because you mentioned that to me earlier, Jose. So I thought that for a little context, I would share that, a little bit of this part. Also, this was like a huge impetus. This story is sort of a huge impetus for wanting to write this, because this story strikes me as sort of wild. All right. So it's weird to read comics, but here we go. This is the year 1993. I am sitting in Miss Pasternak's class, and the VCR is broken. It's Thanksgiving Day. We need to watch a video about a mouse who is on the Mayflower, who wears a hat, but the VCR is broken. Okay, Miss Pasternak has to call over to Miss Michelle's room to get Trevor, young Trevor, to come over. Oh, thank God you're here, Trevor. Can you please fix the VCR? No problem, says Trevor. That was exactly how his voice was. And then he fixed it. That should do it, he said. And I fell in love, just totally in love. This is just my life is all about Trevor from here on out. 1997, in fifth grade, we're out having lunch. And I say, what do you mean you're going to a different middle school? And Trevor says, I don't know. I just am. And look, I'm sad. And I say that it's fine. It's fine. But Trevor's like, yeah, I know it is. Because he doesn't know I'm in love with him. 1998, I'm talking to him on the phone. Hi, is Trevor there? 1999, hanging out with Natalie Haken, we're doing Cat's Cradle on her bed. And I say, honestly, I'm just still very in love with Trevor. Why? He is the love of my life. I can't explain it. You have a crush. I have loved him since he fixed the VCR in second grade. He is the love of my life. Then the year 2000, we started hanging out, even though he was at a different middle school. We played tag. I was really in love with him. So I decided I was going to tell him. So I called him on my phone with a cord. And I said, I guess what I'm trying to say is, Trevor, I like you. I like you. There's like a lot more to that conversation, but you get it. And he didn't say anything. And I said, it's okay. I have to go. I'm not going to read these to you, but these are just a few of the diary entries about how much I was in love with Trevor. I will read you this one from August 29th, 2001. Dear Diary, ugh, I'm in a rut. I think I'm just tired of being mean. Whine, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's because I'm not in love with Trevor. And I'm really not in love with him. Believe me. No, seriously. Do you believe me? Does it mean anything that just thinking about calling him made my heart beat so loud that one could undoubtedly hear it in China? Does it matter that I did call him and he wasn't home and I left a message and now whenever the phone rings, I leap up to get it with a wild spring? No, that matters not. It is obvious that I am extremely over him. Extremely so. Radically so. recklessly so. I am a damned walking thesaurus over him because my mind is clear of all thoughts about stupid individuals named Trevor. And so now I can think about synonyms in depth because of my clear mind. The phone rang. I jumped wildly. It was Tracy with Country Insurance, not Trevor. Love, Sophie. This is just not in the book, but it's just a sample, a real page that I wrote on June 10th of some year. And as you can see, of the 50 things I was thinking about, 47 of them were Trevor. Okay, writing back to that entry. Dear Sophie, you spent a lot of time and energy wondering why Trevor didn't love you and trying to convince yourself not to love Trevor, which I get. So I am very excited to tell you that in 2018, I finally had the opportunity and courage to ask Trevor about all of this. After I published my book, I went to Portland, I no longer live there, to do a reading at Powell's. Powell's, our favorite place on earth, I know. This was before I knew about Women and Children First. I was one sentence in when, oh my God, wait, is that Trevor H? And then my mom, who was also at the reading, stood up and was like, Trevor H is here? Where? Do you know what, young Sophie? It was Trevor H. Just like in a rom-com, Trevor had emerged from deep in the past and was sitting now in the second row of my book reading. Is your heart pounding? Mine was. After the reading, Trevor invited me over to have lunch the next day. I met Trevor's wife, who was beautiful and sharp. When I visited, she'd been making clay vases that looked like women's bodies. She did activism around body positivity. Together, we made a salad, incorporating things they'd grown in their very own backyard. This is when I asked Trevor about not loving you. To be fair, I didn't ask that exactly. I asked Trevor, so what's going on in your life? Okay, no, you're right. That's not the same thing. But the answer spoke to both questions. Well, I'm transitioning. I'm genderqueer. They talked about how they'd never felt comfortable in their own body being in the world as a boy. They didn't feel comfortable when you two knew each other, just being themselves. They said they'd felt shame. They said they didn't know how to be, nor did they want to be opened up. So to speak to your fears from 2 entries ago, there was nothing wrong with your boobs. There is nothing wrong with your weight. There is nothing wrong with your nose. There is nothing wrong with you at all. Love, Sophie. Young Sophie, here is what Trevor did. Oh, I missed a page. These are backwards. Young Sophie, here is what Trevor didn't love about you. Nothing. Trevor was actually not thinking about you very much at all. Trevor was thinking about Trevor, and their thoughts were hard and confusing and impossible for them to translate to you or anyone else. In fact, no one is ever thinking about you nearly as much as you think that they are. They have their own lives to worry about. This is a wonderful relief. All right, this is me circled on the top left and Trevor's in the front, as you can see. Wow. Both of us very beautiful. And then this was us at the reading for Many Love when we reunited, just to prove that happened. And that's the end. That's the end. Now I click stop sharing. Hopefully
Stop sharing.
I've done a good job.
That was excellent. And before we came on screen, you showed me some of what your old diaries look like. Do you want to show them to people real quick?
Yes. Thank you for inviting me to do that, which is like, this is such a, I mean, in some ways this is such a vanity project, obviously, but all right. So here's this one. This is from 2001. It has a puppy riding on a horse. It's like a very Lisa Frank knockoff. This is freshman year Sophie. Really having a good time. This is blood from a staple. I accidentally cut my finger. Wow. This is like an entry where I wrote about sex and I was trying to stop thinking about sex. But I shouldn't. Here's one from October. They're full of Post-it notes because I wrote a book about this. It's not because I just put a ton of Post-it notes in all of my diaries. This one has a lot of artifacts in it. I have like a picture of of Jessica. This was when we did makeovers. Wow. Natalie got a makeover. All the friends having makeovers. That was for a birthday party. This one has happy faces. It's a pretty good one. I have at least 100 of these. 100 is a little bit of an understatement. This one I was like really into writing song lyrics. This is The World is Sleeping, I Am Numb from Ben Folds 5.
Mm.
I don't know if anyone else liked to write song lyrics. This says that I was sociable and entertaining. You are sociable and entertaining. Wow. Do you feel like you get it? This one is pink. It has hearts. It has someone gave me this card with a cow on it that I think was meaningful to me. Did anyone else do this? I think that what this is like print out your old AIM conversations with the people with who you.
Absolutely. What was your AIM username?
This one, I had many. This one was pink checkerboards. I also had like aardvark dyed blue, neon toast in space. I don't know. Just put it. What about you? What was yours?
I was Latino Heat 14, which is embarrassing.
No, it's awesome.
I was Poetic Mind State after I started writing poems. I was Ill Poet 16, very into like age
Nice.
with the AIM.
Yes. Ill
That's
Poet.
Yeah.
Why did you pick 16? Were you 16?
I was 16 years old, yeah. And I just felt like, I just kept it. I kept it until I was like 19 and AIM shut down. So I was Ill Poet 16 far longer than I thought I'd be.
I didn't know AIM shut down. I was going to still use it, but I guess I can't.
You know, I don't know if it officially shut down, but I was off it. You know, I was on to GChat at that moment in time.
I had to move on.
Right.
I haven't used GChat in years either. So, I mean, we need a future of on the internet.
Yeah. I love old AIM screen names. I feel like it was before we knew that the internet was an archive, you know what I mean? And we would have to live with the consequences of our choices.
Yes.
So I like that. All right. So the first question that I have for you is your new book, Dear Sophie, Love Sophie, is structured in a loose call and response format. You share entries from your past self and then respond from your current vantage point. In reading teenage Sophie's entries, I was struck by how many of them center romantic crushes and relationships. That's not a judgment. I know I used to scribble my crushes' names just to feel the way my hand moved writing their names. And over again, I am struck by how much love I was missing out on because I had such a narrow understanding of love. My life then was full of friendship. I had friends to play sports with. I had friends who gave me rides home, friends whose families fed me pizza while we worked on math problems. I know that you write and think a lot about friendship, so I'm wondering when and how you started to pay more attention to the friendships in your life.
Whoa, that was a beautiful question. It also had like writing in it, so I thought it was really, really lovely. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago, Calumet City, Illinois.
Oh, wow. And do you still live, like you live in Chicago? Did you still live in your old neighborhood or have you gone to a different neighborhood?
No, so I actually right now I'm splitting time between Jersey City and Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee right now because I am the artist in residence at the University of Tennessee. So I teach.
Gosh.
Yeah, I teach an undergraduate poetry workshop. So yeah, I'm in Tennessee right now.
That's so cool. I didn't answer your question. I just asked you questions, but I was just trying to picture your friends and math problems and pizza and all of that. Yeah, it took me a long time. I wrote about this a lot in my first two books. And I think that one of the things that I feel like regret and sadness around was like, I thought it was so important to have a boyfriend. That felt like the most important thing. Like, once I had that, it would just be, everything would be fine. Um, which I think is normal. I think people think like, oh, if I just had thing X, like my life would just all really work out, which is one of the reasons it's great to reflect back, because you realize that you'll never get there. You just try to be content, with what you have. Um, and anyway, I have some like regret around that, because when I finally did get my first boyfriend, my friends, I eschewed. There was this lovely period, like freshman year of high school, where like I had all these friends, because I didn't have a boyfriend yet. I was like trying to get one, but it wasn't working. But in the meantime, all these really lovely non-sexual, people. I mean, they weren't necessarily non-sexual, but non-sexual to each other, mutually non-sexual people. Were a big part of my life. And I look back now and I'm like, oh man, I feel like I really screwed that up. I'm sure that I'm not alone in feeling that way, because it became so much less important once you had a boyfriend, and then you lose your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your romantic partner, because you do, and you look around and you're like, oh my, who do I have? Like, what's left? And as I have sort of evolved, I have, put a lot more emphasis on building a community of people. But it took a really, really long time. And I think till I was like 25. I mean, I really feel like, and things kept like falling down and then having to be rebuilt, and I do feel kind of like ashamed about all of that. But also, a diary is a really good place to just put all of that. Just get it out of your face and body. And honestly, like, I spared a lot of the just screeds about the people I had crushes on. The, genders changed over time, but the like desire to write about how crushy I felt never did. I don't know. Did you feel crushy when you were younger? Has that changed for you?
For sure, I definitely felt crushy when I was younger, and I still enjoy the feeling of a crush. Like, there's like a certain electricity that crushes produce that I think is special. And so I don't necessarily, I don't necessarily kind of turn my nose up at crushes. I think crushes are great. Um, what I realized though is what you were talking about was that over and over, I saw, myself and my friends, we would couple off and lose touch with each other, kind of really sink into these relationships. And then we would break up. And it'd be like this whole time, like there was a whole community of people that was still there and willing to love and support me. I never had to rely on just one person for all of the love and support that I needed in my life. I always had an abundance of it. I was just so focused on, maybe the lack of this particular love and desire, that I was missing all of these ways that I already had access to love.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And I think that is something I've been learning about a lot. And I quoted Dean Spade last time I was at Women and Children First, but I'll quote him again in saying that for him, so polyamory is what my last book was about. For him, like, polyamory is about treating his lovers, more like friends, and his friends more like lovers. And by which he means, like, there's a lot of times you feel like you can kind of blow off your friends, like you can cancel your plans with them. Like, they're going to still be there. So you don't need to like really work hard to make sure that you like put in the effort. I'm sure like you hear a lot. We'll make up the time at some point. It'll all be fine. We'll always be friends. This is not going to go anywhere. which is a great amount of flexibility that you have with your friends that we don't allow our lovers. Like lovers are required to just like show up for us and like always be there and be inside a box of like, this is what a, you know, a lover is a person who supports you all the time unconditionally, right? So like being able to make those things a little more fluid, so you show up a little more for your friends and allow more flexibility in your loving partnerships. And I feel like living with those sort of ideas in mind creates sort of a larger sea of humans who you can love and be loved by.
Right, which is really beautiful. My friend Lysandra always says, uh, friendship is romance, which I
Yeah.
think like she'll use that as a caption for photos when she posts friends.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that you can treat your friends in that kind of spirit, right? With that kind of generosity and intensity. I mean, and certainly like I've had friendships now that have lasted for decades, right? And those friendships are, you know, definitely more meaningful than the majority of my romantic relationships. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
absolutely. Yeah, and romantic friendship, like just as a concept, is something that in modern, you know, in modern culture, we don't really discuss, nor do we kind of normalize, but it has existed since, you know, before the Bible. There's like romantic friendships in the Bible. There are romantic
Mhm.
friendships in like the Greek texts. There's romantic friendships in the Victorian text. There's romantic friendships certainly in like the oral histories of indigenous folks and oral histories of African folks. And like this is something that right now, the idea of romantic friendship is a little uncomfortable for us. And I believe it's because like it's bad for capitalism. That's my feeling, is like if we have all these friends and the friendship is deeper than just friendship, you know, it's like if it's like a deep community, you know, sort of thing, then we don't have as much need for like stuff. But everyone needs a lawnmower because we can share a lawnmower because we have each other and we have a communal lawnmower. um, and so I think that since, I mean, historically, I did a little research on this, and historically, the idea of romantic friendship sort of disappeared around the Industrial Revolution, which I just think makes total sense. And for at least for the West, I'm really speaking only for like Western canon, but it's it's so natural to want to be close to others in a way that is deeper and doesn't necessarily have to do with like touching genitals or kissing or any of that. So I think there's so many ways to explode, you know, what a relationship is, what it means, and how to create healthier networks of people.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Listen, I mean, anytime you start talking about capitalism as the root problem of something, I'm 100% in. Um, I wanted to touch on something that I noticed in the book, right? Which is that in Dear Sophie, Love Sophie, which again you can buy right now, highly encourage you to do that. Um, you write to your past, and in doing so, you validate and soothe teenage Sophie. It reminded me of the Sandra Cisneros short story called 11, where she writes that when you are 11, you are also 10, 9, 8, and all of these other ages that you've been, right? This idea that we never stop being those ages, they become layers of us. I like that understanding because it reminds me that the past is not gone, but but its ripples are still felt in the present. So I admire this feeling that to heal the present self, one must also heal the past self, because those past selves still live within us and ache and celebrate. When you were writing and illustrating Dear Sophie, Love Sophie, how did you approach healing your past self? And did you have to change your approach in the process of writing?
that's a great story also. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, I think I have been thinking about this question, and I've been turning it over a little bit in my mind. I think the healing is still ongoing. There's this, it's odd. Like this is a great project for anybody to do, to just like spend a little time with your past self and decide what you need to tell yourself or what you would have loved to have heard. But the child self, it just doesn't heal. Like, and maybe never, maybe that's like ongoing work. I've heard so many metaphors about how the body holds your childhood traumas, and what feels really true to me is like the depth of the groove, like the depth of the pattern, it's so deep. It's like you can walk a different path a million times, but if you like set a marble down, it's going to go down the deep groove that's been there the longest, unless you really push it the other way. And sometimes we just aren't strong enough, so we like revert back. Very curious about, what other people hold. For me, like, I thank you for bringing up the monster chapter. I just really feel that I have like quite a lot of self-loathing, which I think is true for a lot of people who are socialized women, but like I'm guessing for a lot of people in general. But just like, it's as though it's trying to keep you safe, to like say, well, you are unworthy of love or of attention. It's just like still there in a very big way. And so this was a beautiful practice. It was really helpful, but it also just feels like I kept wanting to rewrite chapters from the book as things kept changing. There's no like permanent present self. The present self is just so constantly changing. And since I wrote that book, for example, like I had a daughter, and like having a kid is really, really affecting in terms of how you think of life. And in some ways it's less affecting than I thought it would be. I guess I was just like, oh, my whole life is going to be about this kid now. And certainly it's a miracle and amazing, but it's nothing like I imagined. So, it's just, this is such a messy answer, Jose, and I'm so sorry. I don't know how one heals once. Do you know? Like, what do you do?
Well, I mean, first of all, like, you don't need to apologize. Like, it makes sense. I often think about, I mean, I think what you said about healing not necessarily ending really resonates with me. It reminds me of like all the times in therapy where like I've showed up feeling pretty calm and like, I don't know what we're going to talk about today. I'm like pretty good. And then my therapist asks one question and suddenly I'm in shambles, right? Like it suddenly, all of a sudden, I'm realizing what I was holding that I didn't fully understand I was holding until that moment. Yeah, I don't know. I also wonder how much we need to finish healing, in the sense that, like, to what end? Like, we're human, right? Like you said, and you say this in the epilogue of the book, which I think is really beautiful, the sense that we are always changing, and so that's the only thing that we can rely on. And so, uh, you know, I think we can try to be kind to ourselves and compassionate and practice compassion with ourselves and one another, and at the same time just try to find some solace in the understanding that we will change, and that these circumstances are not kind of set in stone. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's hard. It's difficult. I write poems. Sometimes writing poems
Yeah,
helps. Sometimes it doesn't.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes it doesn't though. Sometimes I'm like,
absolutely.
yeah. Uh,
Absolutely. I mean,
it's
that's exactly what it is. Some one day something will help and another day it won't. But certainly I think like I've been trying to think a lot about like, why did I think that this book really mattered? And I think a lot of it has to do with like creating a shell or like creating a format of how to like get in touch and how to like spend some time with younger self and to like give words that might be helpful to other people when trying to heal trauma or even like even inherited trauma. Sometimes I think that I have been accused sometimes of my language being a little like I teachery. That's how I like to talk to myself. And I think there's like an amount of people for whom that's helpful. And other people like I heal so well reading poems because they're so abstract and non-linear and flowing, and like it feels like sometimes when you're reading a poem you hit a word that like strikes you in that same way, like when a therapist question will strike you. You didn't realize that was the word you needed, and it shows up and it melts you or dissolves you in a way that's really lovely. And anyway, I for me, like I think drawings are similar, that they engage this other side of the brain that sometimes like, oh, I think I wanted to see how that looked. And so this was like a way in. It's just one way in, you know?
Yeah, the project made a lot of sense to me as a poet, because I think often it's expected that poets work from memory and autobiography. And I think after doing that for a while, I found that practice a little bit unfulfilling, and I found it much more fulfilling when I kind of used the poems as a way to kind of mess with the timeline and trying to imagine what else was possible in those moments that made me feel small or hurt, or whatever the case might be. It made it feel from a moment that it helped me feel powerful in that moment, and to, I don't know, just to remind myself, like, just because things were messed up when they occurred doesn't mean that it had to be that way, right? It's not, kind of to your point about the groove, it's not written in stone that it has to be that way. And so like for me, the part that connected to me was this idea of like validating that younger self, and kind of just, yeah, offering to soothe the younger self, as opposed to just, maybe the adult instinct is to just like give the answers to, right? Maybe the adult instinct is to correct in some way. And it felt like that wasn't necessarily the goal, at least to me when I was reading the book.
Yeah, I think that's right
on. One of the more surprising moments in Dear Sophie, Love Sophie, to me, was the chapter on self-harm. And this is something that, when you write back to younger Sophie, my assumption was that you were going to be like, you know, and the good news is that this is all just a small moment in time, right? And it's over now. And instead you write really lovingly and carefully about how this is something that is ongoing. And I guess my question is, what how did you feel? Did you feel what inspired you? I mean, I can kind of maybe guess at the inspiration, right? At wanting to give perhaps people who struggle with self-harm um, or with other things a chance to feel validated in the same way that you did in other chapters, right? A chance to feel like you are coping in this way. But I guess I'm wondering, did you feel any pressure to maybe scrub the record in any way? How did you approach writing that? Did you always know you were going to include it?
Yeah, I feel like that's a subject that is the way that it's written about is it's written about by like usually male health professionals
Mhm.
who are evaluating why people, usually female people, do it. And like occasionally, there are a couple of there's a great essay by Leslie Jamison that's called like the Grand Unified Theory of Female Pain that is also about this topic, but it's something that it feels like people don't talk about it. And I think it has to do with like what we assume about people who cut. I'm going to say cut because that's my, self-harm avenue. And it's difficult because you can read about like alcoholism and smoking and gambling addiction and like any other addictive behavior and be like, oh, this is a real addiction and it's serious. And people will always say like self-harm is and just sort of like an attention seeking behavior. And my first thought on that is like, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, attention is a basic human need. And if someone's trying to indicate that they need attention, I think we should listen to them. I certainly have students who cut, and the way that we talk about it at my school drives me freaking crazy, which is we talk about how cutting is similar to suicidal intent. And to me, it's like so the opposite thing. It's like trying to survive. It's just like really trying to stay alive. And so I feel emotional about it because I just feel like there's just it feels like a really important part of my personal history. And I know that I'm not alone, but there is not, I just don't have, I have no, so few things to like rest on to think, oh, I'm not alone. And like in trying to find support and figuring out how to be present, because that's what healing from addiction is being awake, like being willing to be awake to the world, to your life. And being addicted to anything like is trying to get away from it. So how do we give ourselves permission to be awake and feel like it's safe to be awake in the world? I mean, that's a really hard question, and it feels lonely when there's no one to talk to who doesn't think you're trying to kill yourself or trying to just get attention. So thanks for asking about it. I'm like surprised at how teary I'm getting trying to talk about it, because I know it also is something that like a lot of what's been written about it puts it on white women. But that isn't the true story of all the people who do this. And I think there should be some more visibility, not just from me, but just all around visibility of the different ways that we try to cope that aren't the ones that are socially acceptable. I don't know how to answer that. I feel a little like, oh man, that is a tough question, but I am hoping to open up a conversation around it. And as a person with race privilege, I feel like it's safe for me to be able to at least open the door to the conversation that I would love for everyone to be able to feel safe having. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything you said makes a lot of sense. This idea that because it's assumed to be a gender thing, that it gets dismissed more. And I think that, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I'm so happy that you talked about it. And I do hope that we'll be able to have more conversations about cutting and how do we support people as opposed to just dismiss them as attention seeking or something like that. So thank you for that. We have about 15 minutes left, maybe a little bit less. And I see we have 2 questions. So if you have a question, please ask it and we will happily answer it. I'll ask Jake's question first. Jake says, "Hi, I got my copy of the book over the weekend after listening to Love Without Sex, and I'm excited to read Dear Sophie, Love Sophie. In particular, I think there's some good insight into being honest with yourself about insecurities, something I've only recently realized I need to work on. How do you work on building trust with friends while also revealing that you haven't been truthful with yourself about suppressing insecurities?"
Wow. What a beautiful question. How do you work on building trust with friends while also revealing that you haven't been truthful with yourself about suppressing insecurities? All right, trust is like such a difficult thing, right? Like one of the things that has taken me such a long time to understand is that like you do not owe anybody your whole truth. It's something that people earn. And so like if somebody's asking you about something and you don't feel great about talking about it yet, like, oh, we're not at that trust level. And trust is such a weird thing because there's not like a way to clear path to building it. It requires time. Like time is the ingredient, but like who knows the recipe? It could be anything. And you start to feel it and you start to realize, oh, I feel like safe sharing something else with somebody else. But it is really scary. And I think so there's a chapter in this book where I wrote a lot about like deciding to stop lying, which I just definitely lied for just so much of my life about so many things. And making the decision to stop and also to tell us some truths that were like, if when I tell you that I lied about this, I can imagine that you will leave. And so many of us are afraid that we're going to lose the people we love when we tell them the truth about something, for many reasons. And my experience was certainly that people, did the opposite, like really showed up. But that isn't a given. I mean, not everybody is going to react that way. And that's part of what's so scary. So like, I would say like the most practical advice that I could give would be to like listen to your intuition in terms of like who is feeling safest to you right now as a friend, and make time to spend with, maybe 2 or 3 people, like really put effort into spending the time to build the relationships. And then it feels like, based on your question, there's also so much that self-work to be done over here to the side. And then at some point, those two things can collide. So like prioritizing, I like to call everything a date, but with friends who call whatever you want, but prioritize making dates with people, and also prioritize your self-work, which for most people means talk therapy, but certainly not for everybody. And it's also not accessible to everybody. So it could mean like journaling. It could mean finding like a total stranger who can listen to you. It could mean like engaging with a message board. But make sure you're, if you're starting to feel really like uncomfortable and bad, and leave. It sounds like 2 separate things need to happen. And it's all going to be so slow. Love is so slow. And that is a misconception, because like falling in love is fast, and like lust is fast, and moving towards people is fast, but love is slow. And you like find it, and then you talk about everything, and it feels so good. But I think I didn't do that till I was 32 or 33. And I finally just told my husband just like some true things, and he didn't hate me. It's still hard to tell everybody the truth. What do you think, Jose?
I think that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, you can't control how other people are going to react, right? And you have to let people have their own reactions. I also am really holding tight what you said about how not everyone deserves or has earned all of your truth. I feel like there's this, I just don't think we need to be totally vulnerable with everyone, because not everyone will be kind of safe for us in that way, right? And we shouldn't assume necessarily that people are going to be safe. I think, I feel like now I'm speaking from my own place of hurt and betrayals. But I just feel like it's okay to keep some things for ourselves or just for, maybe a smaller circle of people. I don't think that people get to be entitled to our full stories or every single piece of knowledge about us.
Yeah, agree. It's hard to learn that too. That you get to it's also totally fine to say, I don't feel like sharing that right now. So there's just so many ways to draw boundaries. It's a healthy practice, and it makes it safer for other people to do it when you do it.
Yeah. All right. So next we have a question from Mackenzie, aka Snow Queen 24.
Snow Queen, I love that.
And her question is, how do each of you define love?
Oh, you go first.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
I think so often we hear the word love and just imagine it as, or just narrow it down to its romantic and sexual possibilities. Just a casual question. But I think what feels really, the way that I'm feeling right now, right, and all of this is subject to change, is that love is really expansive. And so there are many different types of love. And it's not that there's necessarily like a hierarchy of love where one love gets to be more important than any other type of love. But for me, like, love is showing up. I always think about the Bell Hooks quote that love is an action, right? Love is a verb. So I think about showing up and being present, and yeah, maybe I'll start there and let you go and see if I can think about some other things. But that's kind of where I start.
In my newsletter today, I was writing about compersion, which is a polyamory term, which means the opposite of jealousy. Because my girlfriend of 5 years got married this weekend, and just like how happy I felt for her. And just like it, like all the way through my whole body of just happiness. So I was looking up compersion, and there's this website called whatiscompersion.com. And I actually think their definition is sort of closer to how I would define love. So they define it, and I'm swapping out compersion for love, as the wholehearted participation in the happiness of others, the sympathetic joy we feel for someone else, even when their positive experience does not involve or benefit us directly. The opposite of possessiveness. I think like those are the things I think of when I think of love, when I think about like just when you are intimately aware that like another person's life like is so bound up in your life and in all the lives that you feel like just joy for them and happiness for them when they accomplish things or like when they are happy. And it's this whole idea of being bound up together and belonging to each other that I think makes, humans have a lot of potential for good, even though mostly we suck.
Yeah, mostly we mess things up, but
there you go. That's so much better.
No, I love that. I hadn't heard that phrase, that word compersion before. I feel like now I'm going to write it down for myself as one to hold tight. So thank you for that.
Here is the website, whatiscompersion.com. Some hero made a Squarespace for it, which I'm very grateful for. It's just a long website about compersion. It looks like they want you to do something with them at the end, but there's some good stuff.
I'll check it out. Thank you. So that's the last question that we have from the audience. I don't know if anyone wants to put in a last minute question, but I think we're also running out of time. So I think it's okay. One more time, if you haven't yet clicked the link to buy Dear Love Sophie, which Sarah is holding up.
Yes. That conversation was so generous, so warm. I just got lost in both of you, the way that you're talking about this book with such the depth that it deserves. So I really, really appreciate everyone who joined us tonight. If you have not purchased the book, please do so. We have signed copies. Mine is not signed. You have to come back and sign mine. That we have signed copies at the store. We ship anywhere in the United States. You can also just come hang out at the store and pick one up. And also purchase Jose's collection and also the anthology he co-edited. That was so amazing. I love that conversation. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for hosting, and thanks to everybody for spending your Wednesday night with us.
Oh, and also, if you know someone who missed this conversation, it wasn't recorded. So you can watch it literally anytime. And we will also upload it to our YouTube channel so that I can add closed captioning for folks who need it. So, yeah, that'll happen soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Sarah. Bye, everybody.